For those of you who have followed me on Instagram or another social media might have noticed that I've been traveling with my boyfriend from Stockholm to Hong Kong by land without flying. And a few of you have been writing to me and asking how we did it and asked for tips on how to make that kind of trip. So I just thought I would use my next opportunity to speak to you to talk about that, to give you some few do and don't. So if you, I think one of the reasons why we did this trip is mainly because I've been dreaming about it for a long time. I have a very long bucket list with things I want to do in my life, and I probably never going to be able to do all of it. Most of it consists of things or places to see or ways of travel. And since I've been working with climate change and sustainability, I'm very much aware of the impact flying has on the environment and how that tremendously increase your own ecological footprint. So I've also been trying to change the way I travel. I haven't stopped flying and I haven't stopped traveling, and all travels comes with some kind of footprint. Even if you're making it very sustainable, it still has an impact. So I wouldn't say that this journey is necessarily a sustainable journey. It was actually more about us to be on an adventure and explore something together. And I did this trip because I really missed Asia and I wanted to go away for a long time, and I didn't want to fly there and back, and I'm still struggling with my love for Asia, especially Southeast Asia and India, which I consider to be my second home, and for it to being so far away from Sweden. So I think what everyone has to do before deciding to go on the Trans-Siberian Railway from Moscow to Beijing, which is kind of like the highlight of the trip, is that you need to look into your visa issues, and that will of course depend on where you're from, what nationality, what kind of passport you have. Unfortunately, the world is not fair. I think as a Swede it's pretty easy to go around most parts of the world, but not the easiest to go to Russia or China. I think there's a few other nationalities out there that can even go there without a visa. So you need to apply for those first, and to be able to do so, to be a Swede, we actually need a few paper documents where, for example, an insurance is needed in Russia. You need to have your travel tip booked in China, how you get into the country, and your ticket for your departure as well. And you also need to hand in fingerprints for China. You also need to, for Russia, I think it's fine not to have the trip booked, but you need to have the date set when you're entering the country and when you exit, and those can't be mixed. So if you definitely have to have the correct date. So there's a little bit of a hassle to book all these and plan all this, to get all the papers, and you need some kind of voucher, I think it's called, for Russia as well. And it can't be provided by a hotel if you're not staying there during your whole trip, which you don't, because you will be on the train. So the easiest thing for us to do was actually to take help of a visa agency that could do all the 3 visas for us. And in the end, I think both of us just pay more, like 50 euros more for it. And it's definitely worth to have someone to help you with all the paperwork. And they cost money. They're not for free, these visas. They're quite expensive. I don't remember exactly how much, but it's at least something like 500 euro per person, I think, or something less than that. So I think you need kind of like a 3 months ahead at least planning to not be stressed about it. And So when you have figured out the paperwork, what kind of papers you need, and then you need to get those papers, which is actually booking the trip. And I will advise you to book the Trans-Siberian Railway first, because you definitely want to make sure you get that part of your trip. How to get into Russia or how to leave China, there's plenty of opportunities and plenty of ways of doing that. And you need to decide how much time you want to spend on each destination and how quickly you want to travel. We did our trip quite fast, I would say, definitely fast for being me, because I love slow traveling. We spent about 3 weeks from Stockholm to Hong Kong. And I think that's the minimum. You can't do it faster. If you did, it wouldn't be nice at all. The train from Moscow to Beijing takes about 6 days. And here you can decide to get off the train. In reality, you don't necessarily have to be on the classical Trans-Siberian train, because that train only leaves once per week, every Tuesday. And of course, you can go the other way around. I mean, you can travel from, if you live in Asia, you can go from Beijing to Russia. I'm just going to explain the trip from the way I did it, but you can go the other way around, of course. And I don't know about the paperwork if you're traveling from an Asian country or an Asian nationality and to Europe, so you have to look into that. So what you have to decide is that you can basically go any day from Moscow to another city in Russia. So you could decide to go for 1 or 2 days to a bigger city in mainland Russia, stay there for a few days, get on another train, because there's Russian trains going all the time. But those trains won't be like the old classical Trans-Siberian train. It will be one of their more modern trains. And I mean, if you're really into comfort, maybe you want to do that. I think a little bit a part of the adventure to stay on the old train. Maybe not so sound for the environment. There's no toilet system. It goes directly on the ground. While the modern Russian trains they have proper toilets. So if you want to go on the traditional, you leave on Tuesday, and if you get off any day of the train, if somewhere in mainland Russia or in Mongolia, you will probably get on another train, which is it's not the traditional one. We did 6 days straight, and there's pros and cons with this. I loved it. I liked the feeling of being stuck somewhere and to challenge my mentality and get into just living on a train. I think it's very interesting. It's very nice. You get very close to people around you, even if most of them probably won't speak English. You see the landscape out there. You get time to read books. There's no stress. I felt so relaxed. I felt so at peace being on the train, having my small routines, and nothing I have to do. I loved it. Others might feel that 6 days on a train is way too much. They might get bored, they might get stressed, they might want to exercise and run, because you do have some time to get off the platform, in some places even like an hour or two. But in most cases, it's just getting off, walk up and down if you feel like moving, and then get on again. And of course, if you want to see more of Russia, you might want to get off sooner. I think probably the most nice thing to do then is to get off at Lake Baikal, which is the world's biggest or largest inland freshwater lake, if I remember it correctly. The train passes for like an hour or two, so you have the opportunity to really see it from the train. But there's a lot of like Russian people camping there and spending their summer holiday there. So that's something you could do if you want to. Mongolia is quite a fast ride, because the country is not that big compared to Russia. So we never got off in Mongolia. Like, we didn't spend a night there or two. And I'm very lucky we didn't, because it was too hot. It was 44 degrees outside, and we met a few people that was going to do horse riding and those things, and I'm always concerned when there's animals involved in tourism, even though the Mongolian and their way of living with the horses is a part of the culture, part of the tradition. I still not sure if 44 degrees and plenty of tourism coming there and riding them. I don't know. I didn't want off. I didn't explore that. But during the summertime, you don't want to get off there because it's too hot. If you want to explore Mongolia, I would probably advise you to go earlier in the spring or in the fall. And the best thing to do, if by talking to other travelers, is to spend time in the desert, not in cities. Not so much to see there, but of course, I mean, as a traveler, it's always interesting to come to a new place and see what this is all about. And yeah, we went during the summer, and which is when the weather in Russia is very, very nice. For us, the first 4 days was quite similar to Sweden, we thought. So we weren't very excited about what we saw outside. We were like, looks like Sweden. But still, there's a few cities you pass by, a few communities, and you see the way of living. I was surprised to see a lot of people having their own gardens. Might be typical for that region or those regions, but it seems to be a high degree of self to sustain yourself when it comes to food supply. And then you have to cross the borders. So crossing from Russia to Mongolia, it takes time, because when you get on the train, they take your ticket and you won't get it back until you're in Beijing. And when you cross the borders, you can stay on the train, but you might not be able to leave your compartment like where you live, and you might not be able to go to the toilet, so you need to keep track on when you entering the borders, because the toilet might be locked for plenty of hours. It could be very late in the night, and you will probably stay up, and it will take some time to stamps and they will search maybe for your luggage. And I thought it would be way more hassle than it was. I thought that people were quite nice and polite, and they did it quite smoothly in Russia and in Mongolia. The border crossing from Mongolia to China is a different story. It takes 7 hours. It's like you need to be prepared on having like a book with you or some podcast you have downloaded to listen to. Because everybody needs to get off the train, and you need to go. It's like coming to a terminal where you have to take your fingerprints and pictures, and they will put you in a room, and you have to sit there, and there's cameras everywhere, and you feel like, okay, everybody's watching. And but it's also I think they spray like antibacterial stuff on the trains. They go through, they do some searching in the trains, and I think they change what do you call it, like the wheels under the train to suit for Chinese models or something like that. So there's a lot of things going on, and I mean in the countries they also changed the restaurant. There's a restaurant on the train. So if you just have your paperwork done, and the dates when you book your train is like matches the dates on your paper and your visas, you will be fine. It just takes time. And packing, then you can choose also to travel in first or second class. We choose second class. I definitely wanted to go in second class. I'm not a big fan of first class traveling, even if I'm learning to adapt to people around me. But I think if you're in second class, that's 4 beds, so you can so you will probably share it with people if you're not 4 people going. But we were quite lucky. We didn't get anyone until we didn't have to share until Mongolia, and that was a woman with her 2 children. They were so cute and so sweet. So that was just a happy moment. The first Mongolian people we met in Mongolia. And then the second night we had an Italian guy, he'd been studying in Sweden, and he was a physician and researcher, and just a very, very sweet person. It was nice to talk to someone. So for us, it was just very, very nice to share the last 2 days with some other people. Otherwise we were alone. And if you go in first class, then it's just 2 beds. So if you're 2 people, you would definitely be alone. It just costs like 300 euros more, 200 euros more, something like that. And I think our train tickets were between 500 and 600 euros. But I think they're cheaper if you book a little bit in advance. If I remembered correctly, I think I saw the price changed a little bit. But in general, like, if you take the train back, or if you take a train to another country and you keep on traveling, like, transportation costs, like doing this trip, is not super cheap, and the visas cost. So if you stay out for long, Russia and China can be quite cheap to live in. I mean, you can get food for €1 or less if you really eat the local stuff. You can even get really good food for like €3. So if you're traveling for a long time, you can, of course, have like cheap expenses per day, but the transportation is not that very, very cheap. Depends on what you compare to. So before going into a route in China, I think what also should be mentioned, except the visas, the travel documents, how you can book first or second class, the restaurant. So there's no shower. I think in the first class they're supposed to have something called a shower. I'm not sure if it really is a shower. I think people told me that it wouldn't consider it to be a shower. What you can do is that in the bathrooms or in the toilets, there's actually a hole in the ground, and you can just have like a very quick bucket shower where you wash your hands. So I mean, face, underarms, you do get clean somehow, but it was very nice to take a proper shower after 6 days. But I think it's fine. For me, I kind of like it. I think it's an adventure. If you're very picky, don't like to be sweaty, like to shower every day, you can't have a dirty hair, I mean, this trip is not for you. You won't enjoy it. I mean, this trip is for people who doesn't care. So I wouldn't recommend anyone who's picky about it doing it. Well, you can travel for a day, get off the train, but that will take a long time then for you to go from Russia to China. So you bring some like wet napkins, bring some antibacterial stuff for your hands, bring soap, bring a small towel, a bigger towel, bring toilet paper. Don't throw it in the toilet because it will end up on the ground. Throw it in the paper bin. Those kind of things are quite necessary. And then you also need food. There's a restaurant, and I didn't thought it was very expensive, but if you have a certain diet, like me and my boyfriend, we are vegans, we knew that it might be there was not many options in the restaurants for vegan people. But the Russian one was quite good. I mean, they had fried potatoes, they had rice, they had vegetables, they made a salad. Like, I think we ate there once or twice. They could prepare a few things, but there was of course a language barrier. Most of the Chinese staff doesn't speak in English. Some of the Russian speaks a few words. And in Russia, there's like this woman who's like in charge of the whole thing. And then each, what do you call it, wagon? Like there's a Chinese man who's responsible for the people that's in that particular wagon, because he had to make sure that people who get off when we stop also get on, and that no one is new coming in, and and in the beginning I think he was drunk or something, but he wasn't very friendly in his smells. But in the end he was very, very sweet, like trying to communicate with us without speaking, like writing. When we crossed Mongolia and he knew how hot it was, he was writing on the window like 44, and we're like 44, and he was like 44, it's hot. So it was quite nice. So we brought food with us, and if you travel during summer like us in Russia, it didn't get too hot. It was like a Swedish summer which is like 20 degrees Celsius. So we had a few like fruits and vegetables that could last for 2 or 3 days, and soya milk, which also lasted for 2 or 3 days. We brought some muesli, and there's hot water there, so you can always make tea, you can always make a porridge, you can bring noodles. Our problem was that all the noodles contained like animal products. We didn't have any noodles, and they were finished also on the train station, so don't buy it on the train station. And yeah, before I forget, when you book a trip on Trans-Siberian, it's not an e-ticket. You have to go to the office and pick it out. So I would advise you to have a few days more in Moscow, and also remember they might be closed on Sundays and Saturdays. So if the train leaves on Tuesday, you should arrive at the latest as Sunday, so you have the Monday to pick the ticket, just to be sure. I mean, you could probably do it the same day, but I wouldn't recommend that because the ticket office is not in central Moscow. And then you can bring, of course, we had like fruit bars. We even bought bars and tea from Sweden because we're a little bit picky about it being vegan and organic. And then we brought a lot of chips, candy, nuts, dried fruit, water. We brought 5 liters each, and that was too little, I think, in the summer, because we didn't expect it to be so hot in Mongolia. So we have to buy water in Mongolia, or a friend bought for us because we didn't have a local currency. And yeah, so except planning for the food, where you probably need something to eat in, you probably need something to eat with. You probably need a cup for tea and a bottle for water. It could be good to bring cash because the restaurant don't accept cards. And you can also exchange money when crossing to Mongolia, even though the exchange rate will be very expensive. We didn't do that because we're just there for a very short time. And you can also exchange money to Chinese yen if you want to. Well, it costs a lot, but you can do that. But I mean, bring some Russia currency on the train at least. So I think those are the most important thing. If you do this trip, it will be very different depending on what time of the year. I have friends doing it January, February. It's 60 minus outside. You don't go outside. You need plenty of clothes. So, and we did in the summer, which was very, very nice. I mean, it was just Mongolia for a day or two where it was very hot. Otherwise, I think the temperature was really, really good. And the trains in Russia were electric, in China too, I think. But in Mongolia, it became a little bit dusty. Coal. We saw a few coal mines, oil, but we also saw wind power and solar power. So this episode is not about energy transition in Russia or China. And the scenery, it's quite, I mean, for me, seeing Russia, it was very much similar to Sweden. But seeing Mongolia and camels and horses outside it was really impressive. And when you enter to China, you will go through plenty of tunnels because, I mean, the landscape is like this big river and huge rocks and rice fields, and some things are very nice to see, some things are not so nice to see, but in general it's very impressive to get closer to a mega city like Beijing. And then you're suddenly out there with a place crowded of people, and in China it's something special, and it's a true adventure. And you can, when you travel in China, you can just continue by train as well. The fast bullet trains are so smooth. I mean, the train station looks like an airport. So yeah, be there 1 hour before, and you will find your gate, and the gate will open like 30 to 20 minutes before departure. And on the train station, or the tracks where the train is leaving, there it even says like the number, like, oh, this is 13 seat number, so you will even know where to stand before the train comes. They super quiet, smoothly. People might be loud, but not the train. And you can just from Beijing, you can go to Xi'an to see the Terracotta Army. I think that was like 4 hours by the train, and From Chengdu, Xi'an was another 4 or 5 hours. From Chengdu to Guyane, it was 7 hours. We were there during high season, so we almost missed, the opportunity to get to by train all the way to Hong Kong, because in the end of our trip, the Chinese have their vacation as well, so all the tickets were sold out. So we decided to stay a day longer and then we could leave. That wasn't the problem for us, just a day more or two, but our original plan was to spend more time in Hong Kong. So if you have a tight schedule, when you book your train ticket, if you do it in Beijing, we got help from our hotel, but normally you have to go to the train station to do it. China is difficult in that sense because they normally use WeChat for a lot of digital services, but even if you do have WeChat and you get someone to translate for you, you still need a Chinese bank account in many cases to be able to purchase something. So it might be good to stay in a hotel with a good service. They can help you out with these things. And also, if you're really sure on how you want to travel, then you can book all the tickets and you get all of them. They're paper tickets, so you need to look after them. We took it a little bit step by step, but in the end we booked more than 2 tickets just to get sure we actually reach Hong Kong in time. But I think if you're not there in July, you will probably have a seat because the Chinese people doesn't have vacation then, and yeah, second class is fine for bullet trains. They're really good standards, and there's hot water there as well and really good toilets. So don't worry. Bring some snacks if you're picky about what you're eating, and if you want to eat some healthier things than just chips or candy. And yeah, how you leave China is a little bit up to how much time you spend there and where you want to go. And I would advise you to not go faster than 2 nights per city, because even though the train doesn't take that much energy, some of them are also like on the east side or the west side. These are big mega cities, so it takes some time to, even if the train per se is quite smoothly, you still need to find your way around in different subway systems, or the metro. But they're really good. The Chinese metro are really good. They're mostly information in English, and it's quite easy to figure out. Make sure you download an app with a good map, because Google doesn't work in China. Neither does Facebook or any other social media. So a good map might be necessary to be able to find your hotel and your way around. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. I think we did fly back because we didn't have the time. I would love to go by land further to see more places of China. I thought China was very interesting. The nature is incredible. There's so many things happening in there. And I would love to spend more time and see more of it. And maybe cross-border, if possible, to some other countries, maybe doing the Silk Road back. But this was our short summer holiday vacation, and we didn't have the time. Both of us needed to get back to work. And then if you fly out, I think you can always climb to compensate. I think everybody should do that, regardless if they fly or not. Like, compensate, just do it. Yeah, so I hope this episode gave you a little bit more information on how to travel the Trans-Siberian Railway. I haven't spoke so much about the highlights and what we saw or what we did. I've been speaking mainly about the practical things with the journey. So if you want to, I can also do that. Just tell you what to see, what to do, where to eat. Oh my God, we've been having so many amazing food experiences. And people are like, you will die, you're vegans, you can't eat. And I was like, oh my gosh, if you haven't tried Chinese vegan food, you haven't tried vegan food. It was so good. But that's for another time. It's a trip definitely worth doing. both countries are super interesting, super beautiful, and it's always nice to meet the people and get your own opinion. So thank you very much for listening. See you soon again.